Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Knit a Spell. I'm your host, Katie Rempe, and today's guest is someone I've been a huge fan of for quite a while. It's Lisa from GetToHookingCrochet. Woohoo! Lisa hosts a social media crochet comedy account, which I highly recommend you follow immediately after this episode. Lisa is a Crochentertainer, which is my new favorite word in the whole wide world, who brings humor, creativity, and clever design to the world of crochet. She makes hilarious merchandise that also benefits the Loose Ends Project, which I can't wait to hear more about. Today, we're talking about how humor and adaptability go hand in hand, what keeps her inspired, and how we can all benefit from taking our craft a little less seriously. Let's get into it. Light from Lantern presents Knit a Spell. I'm your host, Katie Rempe, designer, knit witch, and your companion in this magical making podcast. Together, let's explore the enchanted world where knitting meets the magic of the craft. Okay, Lisa, how did you learn to crochet as you're crocheting right now?
So my aunt actually taught me when I was 8 years old, and I have not stopped since. And I very quickly surpassed her. She only taught me one stitch, which was the double crochet, and only in the back loops. And so everything that I did was freehand and taught myself. I didn't even know you were supposed to go into the V. I didn't know what that was for like a decade or so. A lot of people say they are self-taught now, but self-taught in the age of YouTube and the internet is very different than when you had to walk yourself to the library and get a book.
Yes.
And try to learn that way. That was never my thing. So that's how I learned how to crochet.
Oh, that is so nice. I love it when a family member starts you off. That's very similar to how I learned how to knit. My mom was like, here's the knit stitch. I don't know how to do anything else. Like not even cast off.
Girl, that's it.
I was like, okay, I guess this is the end of my journey with knitting for a while. What then led you to say like, oh, now I must become the crochet designer and a content creator?
I don't actually consider myself a crochet designer. I'm more just a purveyor of crochet chaos, right?
Fun.
But I think for me, I've always been very experimental with everything that I do. And I think like a lot of artists, I have a friend also named Katie who says that our fatal flaw is that you see something out and about and you're like, I could do that. And that has kind of been one of the driving forces of my life. I've had a lot of, I could do that moments, starting from I once on a whim said, I'm going to get my skydiving license. I'm going to be a radio host. And so I was on our NPR local affiliate station for 8 years after that. I am going to audition for this movie and then got the lead role in it at like 18, 19 years old. I am going to be a gestational surrogate, did that twice. And so social media is just one of those things. And I used to also host a podcast about interesting people in the town that I lived in. It is very odd and random, but people who know me just throw it on the pile of random things that
They're not surprised by anything you're doing anymore.
They're not surprised by anything. And especially with the crochet comedy, I was in a comedy troupe and we did sketch comedy videos. And that's, I learned a lot. I knew absolutely nothing when I was part of that troupe, but we had a lot of fun. And so it's kind of been like a natural pairing of all these various interests.
Okay. So this is part of the reason that humor is a big piece of your work. You are leaning into that versus, a lot of people do like learning stuff, but you're like the humor of the craft, which I really appreciate.
Well, and what I also really love is that more people are leaning into humor. And so I started my social media account. I didn't follow any crochet or any knitting content. I just was making what I like, which is interesting storytelling, just being yourself. And I kind of have these two dichotomies within my personality. A lot of people do, right? We aren't just one thing. And one of the parts that's authentic with me is that I love poignant, evocative storytelling. And the other side is I love being completely irreverent and snarky. And so when I launched my account, it was kind of both. But the more I was funny, the more people reacted to that. And so then the algorithm starts to learn who you are, what you do. And then it started serving me crochet content. I'm like, oh, this is dreadful. It's so highly aesthetic. It's so polished. What are we doing in society, especially where most of fiber art is a womanly art, right? And so that's the history of it. And so that is why it's often diminished. It's viewed as frivolous and unnecessary. And a lot of the content that I was seeing was reinforcing this narrative that this is something extraneous or that you have to be perfect and polished in order to build your account. That's not achievable for me. That's not achievable for a lot of people. Or you could be a handsome guy and then your account would blow up too.
Right, yeah.
And so, and all of these things, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with any of this. I mean, I love really highly aesthetic, polished, the ASMR, all these things. But it also, I would imagine that if that's all you're seeing, that makes this craft inaccessible to you.
Definitely.
And it makes you feel worse as a woman, as a parent, as a pet parent, as a human, that it's not, you're not doing enough. You're not perfect enough. And so, even though I didn't start out thinking to myself, let's do the opposite of that. What I was realizing is that a lot of people were resonating with the fact that my videos are not polished, but they still are relatable. And the more I could lean into who I authentically am, the more people resonated with that. And that
Yes.
happened to be the snarky, funny side of me.
I would call it seriously silly, which is one of my favorite, like, smart humor kind of a thing, because you can tell you know what you're talking about, which is why you're able to come at it with such a satirical angle. And like you said, in a society where if you're not perfect immediately when you start, you get so frustrated. You're like, okay, I guess this thing isn't for me, even though I was just doing it for fun. It's a good reminder that we're choosing to do this. We're lucky we don't like need to be doing this, like working all summer in order to have enough winter garments to help us not die. We can make fun and toys and silly things and not take it so seriously.
And I also have learned that as I've gotten to know people in this community, is that perfection is a driving force for many fiber artists. And that's impossible. It's impossible in art, it's impossible in life. And I just want to show that it is okay, even if you have 30 plus years of experience, you're not going to get it right. If you drop a stitch, don't frog it, just fix it in the next round.
One thing that seems like a repeating theme in this season is the idea of perfection. I like to say practice makes progress instead of perfect because, like you said, perfect is subjective. My idea of perfect and your idea of perfect are two different things, and something that is a little bit wonky, something that makes the piece accidentally unique, will be more attractive to people than something that is boring and, quote, perfect.
I agree. Have you heard of the concept of the intentional flaw?
Oh, I feel like quilts that some of the Amish community put in like a on purpose error because the only thing that's perfect is God sort of a thing. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and I have heard it, and I cannot find any research that really shows that this is a real thing, but I really love the concept. And I've always heard it attached to Arab style weaving and rug making, and in the Muslim tradition. Again, you're saying Amish, I'm saying Muslim. There's no research on any of this.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I love it as a fable, right?
Yes.
That we can pick up as a parable for our lives, that only God is perfect. And so sometimes when I make a mistake, I just leave it in and I weave it into whatever my intention is for that piece. And I try to remember that only God is perfect and that whatever little human is going to receive this baby gift or whatever it is I'm making should also hold that intentionality in their own lives.
So, how has social media changed the way you approach crochet and creativity in general?
So this is a good question because I don't know that it has well, no, let me rephrase that. I have learned that my style of freehand chaos crochet is entertaining, but it was also leading to some people feeling like my work was inaccessible. And
Mm,
I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but it is a common refrain among fiber artists or any type of artist where you put something up and everybody wants the pattern.
right.
They're like the seagull from the from Finding Nemo.
Mine?
Pattern, pattern, pattern,
Mine?
pattern, mine,
Mine?
mine, mine.
Yes.
And I was realizing that I should really start writing more things down so that I can repeat things. It's the repetition that I was missing in my work, the ability to do it again. And not saying that I owe anybody anything, but I'm so grateful to this community for being a community and being such a positive, uplifting place. That is one thing that has changed in my work is trying to think about how can I do things more than once rather than just making one thing and leaving it. And so revisiting patterns, revisiting things that I've made again.
On one hand, that's how a lot of like fiber artists in general become accidental designers because they make a thing only for themselves, which I love. I love that one off, like, didn't go through the stress of writing it down. We don't have to monetize everything in every way, even though that is like ingrained in me as a designer at this point. Like, even the one pattern that I didn't write down later, I was like, why didn't I write it down? I gotta
Why
figure
did
it
I
out
write
now.
down?
It's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, you get to offer then that experience to people by having a pattern, but then also it's okay if that's not your jam. Like you said, you don't necessarily have to be a designer just because you create crocheted items. You can just be a person who likes to crochet and share it with other people.
Right. Yeah. And I suppose the other thing that I knew was going to happen because I've had a blog in the past, I've had a podcast in the past, is I knew that if I started to make social media content, that it starts to occupy a space in your brain. And I'm sure you have this too, Katie, as someone who hosts a podcast. You're always thinking about content. And for me, that's a good thing because my creativity needs an outlet.
Mm.
And so I can focus it in this way and I don't have to apply that creative outlet to work, which is not always a healthy thing, right? If you're always focusing on the way that you earn money to feed your family. But I knew that going in, and I knew that I was going to have to be intentional about carving out time for when it was appropriate to be thinking about content, when I needed to focus on other things, when I needed to be present with my family.
Mm.
And so that would have caught me by surprise if I didn't have these other life experiences to draw from.
On that note, you made a reel about being a content creator and how many people are under the disillusion that it's a quick way to make a lot of money. It sounds like this is not your full-time job. Like, maybe you have a job. Can you reflect a little bit on why you chose to make this reel and how you actually make a living?
Yeah, so I didn't realize at the time that I made that reel that that was not something that people were transparent about in the content creator community.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of this is I had a boss who once said that I'm a compulsive truth teller. And so being honest and transparent has always been part of my personality. And part of it is my culture, right? I'm Vietnamese American. And you often know whether somebody is married, whether they have kids, how much they make, what they do before you know their name. It's just how we greet people that we've just met. It's one of the reasons why I don't go to Vietnamese nail salons because I have to divulge too much about my life.
I
But
see.
anyway, it's and so part of that was that, oh, I didn't realize that this was a hidden thing because if you remember, I wasn't in crochet content. I wasn't in fiber art communities until I started doing this. And then the other thing that motivated me to do that is I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you ask Gen Alpha what they want to be when they grow up, there have been studies as recently as I think last year that show that being a content creator or social media influencer is the fourth most desired profession. And
Mm.
honey child, you're not going to make money that way.
Oh my God.
My own children are not allowed to be on social media at all as long as they live under my house. I don't care if you're 30 years old, you live in my house, you can't have social media. You don't know who you are. You don't know how to put up those boundaries. You don't know what is okay to share and not share. And you don't know how to keep yourself safe. And it can change what you believe about yourself and who you think you are if you don't have a strong sense of self. And again, people make it seem easy. Like even me, right? I fall into this trap. I see the big creators and they are popular for a reason. I love their content. There's a reason why they have millions of followers and are able to quit their job. That is not achievable by most people. I don't know how many followers I have right now because I don't think that that's super healthy to pay attention to. But whatever it is not even considered a big content creator. Most of the people on your Patreon or who are watching this are going to be like, who is this lady? When other people who message me, and this was another motivation for me to make this real, if somebody replies or sends me a PM, sometimes I'll write back and they'll be excited as if they talked to a celebrity. And I'm like, wait, me? What? Huh?
Right.
I mean,
I got through your
it
team to talk to you.
right. Yeah, my team is
That's
me.
right.
Phone when my kids are asleep. It these parasocial relationships that we've formed with people and celebritizing normal people is something to be cautious about because for the most part, the grand majority of people are living the same life as you. They have the same struggles as you. They can't afford eggs, just like you can't afford eggs. It's real and it's hard. And there's nothing about becoming an influencer or a content creator that is going to change any of that, even if you are able to do it successfully for your vocation. But
Yeah.
even then, if you're in the US, say goodbye to 30 to 40% in terms of self-employment taxes. Where are you going to pay for your health care? If you have a family, you're going to support them. It's not achievable for the grand majority of people.
Yes. And the people who have those like perfect looking accounts are spending thousands of dollars on equipment like microphones and super high end cameras and computers and mixers and lighting. Like it's so much investment for what you said could be no return. No matter how hard you
Right.
work, how consistently you put up videos, and how unique your voice is. This was a big awakening for me a long time ago, back when, gosh, I guess I was just out of college. So I went to school for fashion design and I had started working at a local yarn store, and they would have in knitting designers, quote, popular knitting designers, who I was like, wow, you're traveling, like you're meeting people, you're teaching classes, you're selling patterns, like you've done it. And every single one of them, this was their side job. Their husband had, like, the thing that actually supported the family, or they had another real job. None of them, except for one of them, and I'll bet anyone who's a knitter could probably guess that one person. I still can't imagine how much he's putting into his work to get what I imagine is much less than we anticipate he likely makes. So it's
Right.
it's
And
a
good
hard
for
job.
him, right? That's not taking anything away from any of these people, but it is hard.
Yes. And he's been
It,
doing
it,
it
it
for like 20 years or something crazy long. So it's not like he
yeah,
just appeared on the scene, was lucky. It takes a lot to get a little in this game.
it does. And for me, I don't have a husband who has the thing that supports. That's me. I'm the primary breadwinner, have always been.
Mm.
My husband's home with the kids and he loves that. It fulfills him. And that's wonderful, but someone still has to pay the bills.
What other hobbies or fiber crafts do you enjoy outside of crochet?
And so, like you, I would say, but in the opposite way. You don't crochet, I don't knit. I try to be fiber art inclusive on my page, and so I will often reference knitting, but anytime you see me knitting in a video, it's completely fake, and it is obviously fake as kind of
PV knitting.
an inside joke, right? I write a lot, which should probably come as no surprise if you followed my account for a while. And that has been a long-standing hobby. And I cook, and I really enjoy cooking. And so I started as a vegetarian, and then I have birthed 4 babies, and every time I have lost a different food group. And so now I'm a allergy-based vegan is what I say. And so being able to modify recipes that are significant to me, that have a tie to my culture or the culture of my bonus daughters who are from Afghanistan, but make it vegan
Yeah.
is a fun challenge that I've been trying to understand.
It's a creative constraint.
It is a creative constraint, and that's one of the things that we try to practice in our household is being intentional about our feelings. And so I often say to my son in particular, happiness is a choice. And for me, as somebody who every time I travel and go to a new restaurant, this is a life and death situation. I'm always trying to assess whether I'm going to make it out of this situation alive. And sometimes there's cross contamination. And if it doesn't blow up into some big anaphylactic thing, I always try to sit mindfully with that and be grateful that I'm having a low level of reaction, and that that pain reminds you to be careful about what you put in your body. It's a blessing in many ways, if you think about it that way.
It seems like you approach life and the creative arts with a magical lens. Where did that develop from for you?
I don't know. I think it's just always been the way I've seen my world. Maybe it goes way back. My great grandfather was an exorcist in
What?
Vietnam. Yeah. And so, and if you know any Vietnamese people, the supernatural line and the real world line is very thin. We all have ghost stories. It's a war torn culture that still influences it today, especially members of the diaspora. And so we all have these tales to tell. And so I guess magical realism is just part of the DNA.
That's interesting. I had just had on Daniela Semina, who learned a lot about witchcraft, magical influences, practical magic from her grandmother. And when I asked her, why have we lost this magical thinking when it was so prevalent 2-3 generations ago? And she said it was in an effort to blend in with people, especially as you would go maybe from like the country to the city. It kind of became like, okay, we have to fit in more. And if I talk about like being able to see a spirit or this herb will help a cut or something, you know, people will make fun of me. And so it's sort of like accidental suppression of that magical intuition.
That's an interesting concept, right? Especially for me as a first gen person who gave up a lot in order to fit in. But the Western versus Eastern blend of thinking and the way that you use herbs or the way that you use a balance between hot and cold and spicy and cool has remained.
Hmm.
So, what do you keep and what do you put down is another way to approach your art, too, because everybody has that problem of I started this project and I really, really loved it. And now I'm really, really bored with it.
Yes.
So, how do you balance all these things? And so I always try to keep one project that is just repetitive, and that is usually a pop project. And then I've never been a person who starts a lot of projects and but doesn't finish them. And so that is one good thing about content creation because you're finishing more projects than you began,
Oh, well, okay,
other
that's a
than
big,
my one prop project.
yeah. Well, that's a big plus. Everyone says starting a project is the best part of a project, but I dare say it's the finishing of a project
It's
that
the
is the best
finishing
part.
of a project.
Yes. So, how do you find yourself balancing running a business, having your job, and keeping things fun and lighthearted on the social media account?
So I am very privileged in that I am not running a business,
Oh, yeah, right. Good
and
point.
anything I'm doing on social media is purely for fun, and the fun is the point. And so I understand that a lot of people don't have that privilege, and they are really trying to hustle in order to sell patterns or to build their account in order to sell products. And my recommendation to them is something that I learned from my, at the time, 12-year-old son is you have to pick a platform, one main theme that makes you stand out from the rest of the crowd. And for me, that happens to be crochet comedy. For you, it might be different. And then that should be the main thoroughfare. When you type it into YouTube, that's what comes up is your face in this niche within a niche. And then you mix in your other stuff. So your patterns could be like 20%. And then pick another platform, but don't go more than like 3 to 5 brand voices that you're going to push at any given time, which is very insightful for a 12-year-old to say.
I'll
But
say
I've kind of been
lots of people
following that.
have years of business coaching in order to get that same message.
I know I was so I had been watching the algorithm. I'd been posting content for about a year. I'd been trying to learn, trying to learn. And then one day, because we don't talk about social media much at all, this is just this side thing that mom does. And so you just don't bother her. She's filming a video. I looked at him. I'm like, I'm thinking about starting a YouTube. And he just lit up. He's like, I know everything about the algorithm. I've been studying it. And then he just rattled off all these things that I've been taking a year and a half to try to learn. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I don't
Okay,
know where
little
that comes
genius.
from.
The help is coming from inside the house. That's so nice.
Right?
So, you have a line of merchandise where the proceeds go to benefit Loose Ends Project. Why did you decide to partner with them? And can you tell us a little bit more about the cause?
Yes. And so, as we're talking about using your intuition to make decisions, the merch line is actually a collaboration with Crafts by Janely, who I know IRL. And we had been talking, or I had been talking about doing a merch line for a while. She had this small business making custom apparel and gifts. And part of something that I've always wanted to do with my platform is to bring attention to small creators and small shops. And so I've been saying for a while, I want to do a merch line, but I have enough money. And I want any proceeds that would normally be split that would go to me to go to a charity, but I don't know which one. I want it to be kind of, it has to be fiber arts related and not too controversial, right?
Mm.
Because I'm trying to bring more voices in and not make people feel excluded. And so we've been thinking about this for a while and nothing was coming up. And one of the things that has been important in my life, or a big part of my life, is the process of death, mourning, and grieving. And I had already been in a mournful space for a couple of weeks. And anybody who has experienced significant loss in their life and has experienced a big time gap will recognize that you don't just mourn that person and then they're gone forever. It comes in waves. And when it comes, you have to honor that in your life. And so I had been sitting with this feeling for a couple of weeks. And whenever that happens, I just know that something is going to happen in that space of my life that I just have to pay attention to and look out for. Then all of a sudden I was on my Finsta, which is, your real Instagram, your fake Instagram, your real Instagram. And I was on my real Instagram and I get a 60-second doc served onto my feed, and it's all about the Loose Ends Project. And they are a charity organization where people submit handwork and fiber arts that were started by a loved one, but not completed for reasons of death or serious illness. And the interesting thing about my personal Instagram is that I have every single fiber art term muted because I don't, again, separation.
Yes.
I don't have, I'm like, don't show me any crochet, don't show me any yarn, don't show me any knitting. I don't want to see any of it. And yet here is this stuff. And
Mm.
it's showing this story of this organization and how meaningful it is for other people. And I was like, oh my God, Janalee, this is it. We've been talking about this for so long, and we had set it down because the time didn't feel right. We had just begun starting to talk about it again. And here was this talk. I'm like, that's it. But that's not even the funniest thing, Katie. So then maybe 2 days later, I am in my business, my creator account, and I get a message, and it's from Macy at the New Sense Project. And she's like, we're big fans. Can we just meet sometime? Just to do exactly what you and I are doing, where we have our projects, we're working on it, we're just chit-chatting. None of it was recorded. And I said, absolutely. And then on this call, I said, guess what? I want to do this merch line. I had already picked you, or the universe has picked you as the recipient of the proceeds. And so
Wow.
we had a lovely conversation, and then we recorded a video afterwards, and we brought Crafts by Janalee in, and that's how this beautiful relationship has begun and has continued to grow. Now, again, in full disclosure, it's not like merch sales are a big moneymaker, but we did work on a project together where I was one of their volunteer finishers, and that video has gone viral-ish. It's up to almost 7 million views, which is a lot for me, and it's their biggest performing one. And it all comes at the same time that they are losing their major corporate sponsor, Joanne Fabrics. And so I'm really hoping that in a small way that these series of non-coincidental coincidences
Right.
will bear fruit for them.
Wow. Talk about a kismet meeting.
And so I'm sure that's way more than what you intended. Yeah,
No,
that's the full story.
That's great. I mean, that's like a perfect story for the Knit a Spell audience, all about, again, trusting your instincts and the magic of making. And what's more magical than finishing a project for someone who can't, for it to be enjoyed by the people who knew that person. No matter what it was made out of or what the design is, having that reminder of the person is incredible. And then that finisher gets to be part of that magical journey. I love this. I'll definitely be looking more into it myself. I did see that you had made a video about Joann's being one of their big sponsors. So hopefully somebody will come up, behind them to also support such a great cause. But you're being an excellent example that you don't have to be a huge corporation. You can just be you, and any support that you give to that, whether it's your time or a little bit of money, is helpful. So good for you. Using that influence for good.
Right? What are we doing as people if we aren't using our influence for good? And I'm realizing that a lot of what I'm saying is pretty counter to one of my biggest, most popular series, which is What to Crochet or Knit for People That You Can't Stand. But again, we're all dichotomies, right?
But that also is part of the magic. Actually, I think it was the author I had on who wrote Hex Twisting, who's to say that you can't make something intentionally out of scratchy yarn for that person you hate? Like, no problem.
Absolutely. No problem.
Oh my goodness, Lisa. This has been so amazing. Please tell everyone where they can follow you and support your work.
My handle is GetToHookingCrochet. It's not ghetto hooking. Sometimes I get accused of that. I would never, but GetToHookingCrochet. And you can find me across most of the popular social media platforms.
And I'll make sure to link everything in the description so it's super easy for everyone to follow you. Thank you for being on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure.
It's been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone. Remember, you can catch the after show on Patreon on Friday with Lisa and I. And if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with a friend. We will see you next week. Merry Make, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, consider sharing it with a friend, leaving a review on iTunes or Spotify, and supporting us on Patreon to enjoy exclusive content. You can also subscribe to the Light from Lantern YouTube channel to receive a notification whenever a new episode of Knit a Spell is released. And as always, I'd love to hear your feedback on this episode, so be sure to leave a comment on YouTube or on Patreon. See you next week!